Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we'll be giving our review on the second instalment in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, with Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, which was the 2006 film, once again directed by Gore Verbinski. We're reviewing all the Pirates of the Caribbean films in the lead up to Pirates of the Caribbean Salazar's Revenge, or Dead Men Tell No Tales, whatever you want to call it. And I believe this is your favourite, isn't it? Objectively the first one, but this is pretty much your go-to one in the franchise.
Yeah, I love Dead Man's Chest. It was one of those films that it completely captivated me when I was younger, and I love everything about it. Like I said in the review for yesterday, Curse the Black Pearl is the best film, but it's not my favourite. And anyone that's watched this channel knows that I will always go watch a favourite film rather than a film that I think is best made. For example, everyone knows I love Star Wars, but not many people know that I think the best one I've made is Schindler's List.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those, but I love Dead Man's Chest. I absolutely love this film.
See, I'm really torn on this one because, I still like it. I find the first three Pirates of the Caribbean films just immensely entertaining, and this one's no different to that. However, I do, with this one, think that the plot does get a little bit muddy. It feels a little bit meandering in places, and I don't know if that's down, because I was actually reading a bit about this film before we hit record, that they kind of were making the script as they went along, and I don't know if the strainer, because they shot this and At World's End back to back. I don't know if that sort of like filtered into the story maybe, and how it was a bit meandering in places, because when people criticise this film, they pretty much criticise the story and its kind of lack of focus and the running time, because this is where they started to hit that just short of 3-hour running time. I think this runs for about 160 minutes. But that being said, I still love this film. It is that archetypal bridging movie, though. It's kind of just that placeholder to get you to the finale, or what we thought was the finale with the third one. If I'm going to talk a bit, though, about my first time watching it, I was so hyped for this movie when it came out. And there was a good bit of time. There was 3 years between the first one and this one, so it felt earned that you would get hyped for this one. And the first one took everyone by surprise. No one thought that movie was going to be as good as it was. And audiences really took to it and took to the characters. And when we were getting a sequel, and I'd aged a bit at this point. I think I was 13 when this came out, so I think that was the perfect age to go into this movie. And I remember going to the cinema. I think it was a weekend I went on a Saturday, and it was like, finally, I'm sitting down to watch another Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And I was just, from the opening scene right to the end, I was just on the edge of my seat, just glued to the screen. I loved it.
So I've kind of half spoke about the first time I saw it. What I will say, it came out on the weekend of my 10th birthday party. Whoop whoop. True story. Curse the Black Pearl actually came out on my birthday, but I didn't watch it. So for those that haven't listened to yesterday, the first time I saw Pirates of the Caribbean 1 was the weekend that Pirates of the Caribbean 2 came out, because I was cut long story short, I was at a friend's house. Their family were going off to the cinema to watch Dead Man's Chest. They showed me a trailer for it back on the day of piratesofthecaribbean.com, when .coms were a thing. And I remember being, wow, this looks amazing. So I was bought Pirates of the Caribbean 1 on DVD straight after. And then I never saw Pirates of the Caribbean 2 at the cinema. I got it for Christmas on DVD, and I remember as soon as everyone was done with the presents, it was straight onto the DVD player downstairs, watching it for the first time. I'd been bought a chair, so I had the chair set right in front of the TV, and I had waited a long time to see this film. I remember they were saw it at school back in the days of, I don't know how the Americans remember this, but with reenact films on the playground. I was 10, it was primary school. And before I ever saw this film, I remember someone in the year below me, people trying to play Pirates of the Caribbean, and as they're like, I haven't seen Dead Man's Chest, it didn't get spoiled. However, he kept going on about the jar of dirt, and look, an undead monkey. And those two quotes have stuck with me for years, because I was intrigued and angry that someone kept repeating the same words. Because my attitude is the arrogance of, I want to be the first one to see this film. And I hated the fact that I was 6 months behind. It's good to know that I'm still like that 11 years later. But yeah, I saw this on DVD and I loved it. I was really, let's be honest, the only reason I saw 1 was because I wanted to watch 2. I guess that kind of sets it in stone. I'll just say it. I'm in love with the Davy Jones crew, the Locker, all of it. I love this film so much. This is honestly one of those films where you don't talk about for ages, and then when you revisit it, you absolutely adore it. And this is one for me. Yeah, I wish I would have been able to see this at a big screen. It would have been phenomenal.
So, I mean, you were still hyped for this movie then, but it was a different kind of hype because you pretty much just went directly from the first one into the second one, whereas I had to wait those 3 years. I did my waiting.
Yeah, I still waited July to 5 months. I waited for Christmas, but it was, you know, when everyone else has seen it and you kind of there like, I need to get into it. And
yeah,
one thing I do want to say, at the time, I didn't know at the end of Dead Man's Chest that there was a third film in development. I didn't know they'd been shot back to back. I remember literally seeing this, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I literally think it was a couple of weeks later the first trailer came out for At World's End, because like, oh my god, Jack Sparrow is alive? What? But I think that helped the experience. And, you know, you kind of said this was a bridging film, which I completely get with it, but this is going to, I'll go on record say, to me, this was one of those sort of Empire Strikes Back films. I know it's the middle chapter, the dark.
By the end of the film, definitely.
Yeah, the way this film finishes, we're jumping way ahead, but you know, just the atmosphere of the room, everything about it felt so dark, and I hadn't really properly seen that in films because back then, I've said before, I wasn't the biggest fan of Empire Strikes Back, so I was about 12, 13, and Dark Knight hadn't come out yet, so this was really the first ever sequel where it got dark for me myself.
Yeah, same. And I mean, going back, the imagery definitely with Davy Jones's crew is incredibly dark, especially the scene where like they're flogging Will, aren't they? Because doesn't he like mess up? He's trying to like pull like a rope or something on the ship, and it does get pretty grim in that regard. I was actually reading that the initial idea they did want to just they wanted to do a sequel, obviously, and I think they greenlit 2 sequels. But they wanted to make them like individual films, like different adventures for each film, and then they eventually decided against that, and they wanted to do one, like a big story that would bridge into 2 movies, which is what we got with Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. I think that was the right choice because it does feel like a story that's justified being in 2 movies. I think there's definitely some plot points that could have been cut out though, but those kind of compound more into the next movie. I think what sticks with a lot of people with this one is that it did introduce so much new stuff in terms of the visuals, and I mean we'll definitely talk about the Kraken later, but this is stuff that lasted between 2 movies, and I think that people go back to this one because this was the setup of, you know, iconography with the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise that has been lasting purely for the fact that it has been in 2 movies.
Yeah, and I think with this, before looking at some of the other stuff, when you've got these films back to back with each other, going along to the story, I feel that with these 2, I'm not the biggest fan of 3, we'll get to that tomorrow, but you can watch 2 and 3 on their own. It's not a film series where you have to watch them back to back with each other. Especially in this day and age, there are so many traps, you know, you're going to have to watch Infinity War 1 back to back with Infinity War 2. They're not going to stand alone. Whereas with these films do, and I like that the story does overlap because there's the core story, but then each one's got its own plot points. For better or worse, you know, you've got the sort of the Jack and Elizabeth fake love triangle in the second one, but that plays into the third one, but it works in the second one alone, and what happens in the third one works in the third one. It's one of those where, personally, I felt that filming back to back was the good idea. You said before we hit record, you know, probably something to do with Lord of the Rings doing it. I reckon it's completely that.
Yeah, well, I was actually looking at my shelf. I was trying to think, is there an example of a film that was done before Lord of the Rings that was shot back to back, like how Peter Jackson did? And there may have been, but I literally cannot think of another film that did that. So I don't know if that was something that was started with Lord of the Rings, because that's a complete mammoth task when you think about that, and especially with how long these films are as well. Just undertaking that project, like, I do not envy the director in that regard at all. But no, I definitely do think that Lord of the Rings had an impact on that. But as I said, like, I think that the story's big enough. They definitely try and make it more epic and more visually interesting, I guess, in the first movie. This is what I mean. The first movie, when you watch it again, that's still definitely my favourite because it does feel like the most stripped down and simple version of all these films. But that's not necessarily a slight against these movies. It is a very different experience when you watch 2 and 3. But it definitely still feels like it's part of that Pirates of the Caribbean world that was created in the first movie.
Oh, definitely. Everything in this film, it feels so right. And what we said yesterday, you know, the first film you had the skeleton crew. In this we have the fish crew. And obviously later on, each even villainous crew, but the British Empire. Everything feels so not. I'm not going to say historically accurate because I don't know the history, and obviously some of it's mixed, but like we said before, from the costumes to the sets to everything, it feels so right. It doesn't feel like they've jumped out their universe too much. Yes, there's a heavy reliance on CGI, but because of motion capture and what they did with it, they were able to make it blend in. And today, 11 years later, these effects hold up so well. Dead Man's Chest do. It's a bit different with the first one because it's very different. Obviously, the 3 years between them, a lot developed in terms of CGI and whatnot.
Oh yeah. But
this today, Davy Jones's CGI is still, to me, one of the best CGI creations ever made.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie won the award for Best Visual Effects at the Oscars as well. It's absolutely deserved. And again, I think that the CGI looks great because although there's definitely a lot more CGI in this one and even more in the third one, they still do build real ships. They shoot on real locations and build sets, so the CGI just feels more organic when you see it in the scene. And I mean, the CGI itself is fantastic, and just what I'm again like with, well, I think that motion capture, didn't it start with Jar Jar Binks in Phantom Menace? Yeah. Then obviously it was used as Gollum in Lord of the Rings, which definitely had a powerhouse just drive for that technology. And then I would even argue that this one even upped what was done in Lord of the Rings as well in terms of what they could do with it. I guess that can bring us on to the characters then. So we've got a lot of characters to talk about, many new characters in this film as well. We're going to talk about some old favourites with this one. Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp obviously returning again as the main character. Now, I really don't know what to think of him in this movie. I still praise his performance. He still gives it his all. Absolutely, really gets into the character, both in terms of the voice and the physicality, everything like that. But this is where the writer's room really felt like, oh, the audience has really warmed to this character. They like the quirky Jack Sparrow. Let's really ramp up the quirks and the funny lines, and just, he feels like a jester character in this movie. Right up until the last scene, I would say, when he has that dialogue with Elizabeth Swann, which I think is really fantastic, and he feels like the Jack Sparrow from the first movie. I won't go so far as to say I hate him, but when you're watching like all the Pelagosto shenanigans, watching that movie again, you could literally cut that entire scene out. It's just done as an action beat to just get you from one point in the movie to the other. It does kind of get annoying. You can kind of chuckle at it, you can kind of smirk at some bits, but it does kind of... It feels like it's a tad too much for me, at least.
Yeah, I think with the first two, the first film, obviously, we've said before, you know, Jack Steed's wonderful in it. The second one, it's kind of foreshadowing what's to come, where they slowly, you know, they do a couple of his old one-liners. Why is the rum always gone? You know, pirates.
It's like diminishing returns, isn't it, though? Like, you laughed the first time you watched it, and now it's like,
yeah.
I get it, yeah.
And I like Jack in 2. It's when you hit 3 and 4, it felt worse. So he still feels kind of fresh. I like the backstory to sort of... obviously, we knew about him and Bootstrap Bill, but I like the angle played where Davy Jones, you know, there's a previous history with them, and it felt right for this film and for the story angle. But yeah, it's, you know, you can see, oh god, they're going to turn this guy into like the 5 Quid Wonder or something like that. Like, you know, when it's like the classics difficult second album. You're going to get 2-3 good songs on it, but then a lot of bands will try and rehash what they did in the first one. That's like the character of Jack Sparrow to me. You know, some bits do work in this. I like the going to the compass more, stuff like that. You see some elements of a more human side to him, but, you know, then the rest is just easy written down, playing it for laughs.
Yeah, and this is where the plot kind of gets really awkward with this one, because some would argue that this is absolutely about Jack Sparrow because he gets the black spot put on him, which is basically a pirate's death sentence, and means it will, in this one they imply that it's like a tracking device for the Kraken, which is a pretty cool way of going about it, I think, and introducing the Kraken in that way. Like, it's almost like the Kraken becomes the Terminator, like it will not stop until it gets you. I thought that was really cool. But then with the Will Turner character and the Elizabeth Swann, it very much feels like, to me at least, Jack Sparrow's sidelined in this movie, and he's just kind of there for comedy antics. And this is where the plot gets really weird, because you're constantly thinking, well, who's on whose side at the minute? Who's working for the East India Trading Company? Each character seems to have be playing like a double agent or something, or have their own agenda. And it does get, at some points, you do kind of scratch your head like, right, okay, what's happening? Who's the good guy here? What's happening? And I do think it does get a bit complicated with the writing throughout this one, and especially in the third one. But No, I really don't know where I stand with Jack Sparrow in this film. As I said, like Johnny Depp plays it fantastically still, but it's just it doesn't have that impact or that charm that he did in the first one. I actually think he's a lot better in At World's End, although he still does have some of the cringeworthy jokes. But as you said, it's kind of foreshadowing what's to come. But you did mention Bill Turner, so I guess we can get on to Will and Bootstrap now if you want.
Yeah, Will and Bill, Kill Bill. I said this yesterday. That I'm not the biggest fan of Will Turner from the first film, and I thought the best things of Will in the first film was him refusing to accept that his dad was a pirate. That I've really enjoyed that backstory, the mystery element to him. And in this, we meet Bill Turner in one of the opening scenes. It's not some big reveal, I am your father, Will. At the end, it's literally, oh God, Bill Turner, Bootstrap Bill's still alive. The relationship between these two guys, I mean, like I said, I liked it in the first one, and to me, this was one of the strongest sort of character points of this entire film, is them not discovering themselves, but the entirety of when those two run scenes together. I genuinely think this is it's not hard, but it's some of Orlando Bloom's like best acting. I don't know if that says a lot, but in these films, I've said before, I don't like Elizabeth Swann, I don't like Keira Knightley. They don't work together, and by separating them, I genuinely think it really helped the character of Will, but it really didn't help Elizabeth, because I don't buy into her at all in this. But the Will and Bill stuff, I love it. I think Stellan Skarsgård, he, for a starfish face covered in gunk, I thought he did really well. When he doesn't like his son, when they find out that they're relatives, there's a brilliant scene where they're taking the lashings. I'll deal with them. The Flying Dutchman made such a good family angle to Will, and he feels like he needs to be in this story, that he's not there for the hell of it.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I'm going to talk about Bill first. Stellan Skarsgård's just an awesome actor. Like, I love him in pretty much everything that he's in. And I do think it was a good decision, because he's the only crew member that's done with practical makeup. I think it said something, he was in makeup for like 4 hours every day, which I know isn't like the most amount of time anyone's ever spent in makeup on a film, but it's still a long time, especially judging by the time they'd probably start these shoots in the morning. He's great, and I think that having him in makeup rather than CGI, not to say you can't generate emotion through CGI, you absolutely can, but I think that maybe sort of it's a benefit towards their relationship. Like, he feels like a real person. I guess you could argue as well that I think they say in the movie that the more messed up their faces are with barnacles and fish things shows how many years they've devoted to the Dutchman.
Yeah.
So you could still say that he's in that transitional period, and you see in the third one he gets more and more stuff put on his face as he becomes more part of the ship. Will Turner I still hate in this movie. I just pure and simply can't stand Orlando Bloom in any of these films. I will agree that he gets a lot more to do in terms of his character with this one, with his dad, which is a nice angle, but I just don't buy it when Orlando Bloom's playing it. It's the same emotion, it's the same tone in his voice just constantly, and Stellan Skarsgård's giving it his all, but I just don't get anything from Orlando Bloom, and even less from Keira Knightley. Like, my God, what is her story arc in this movie? She kind of hangs around on a ship for a while because her wedding got ruined. She hangs out with I don't know if there's any UK viewers listening to this, the guy who plays Taggart, the detective series, plays the captain of the ship, the Scottish captain.
Yep.
Before the Kraken attacks. But she's so shrill and just like a harpy in this movie all the way through it. I really can't stand her. She gets a bit more to do in the last scene, which I think she plays that brilliantly alongside Johnny Depp in that final scene, but you've got to get through like 2.5 hours of movie just to get to that scene.
Yeah, Elizabeth Swann. Why is she here? In all honesty, I prefer her dad scenes in this film, because I like the whole angle of the East India Trading Company, the politic background of them taking over. But my wedding got ruined, and now I'm dressing up as a boy, but I look the exact same.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm randomly painting the deck of this ship, but I am. I'm flying this ghost around. Go to Tortuga. I didn't like her scenes at all. I feel that she's shoehorned into this plot to get to that final scene where Will catches her kissing Jack. I don't like her at all in it. She's people call Ray a Mary Sue, and I'm not going to get into that debate.
Quite rightly so. I will just say that. But
Elizabeth is a Mary Sue.
Well, she's Pirate King in the next movie.
Yeah. Oh God, wait till we talk about the next movie. Trust me. I I just despise what they do with the character. The first one, she's in the story for a reason, she works in it, but the second and third, like in wrestling terms, why she got that massive push where she's like ahead of everyone else, it just doesn't make any sense to me, and it still doesn't. I don't like her in this film at all.
Same.
She don't need to be in here. I know she has to because she's kind of part of the trio, but you didn't need her in this one.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about that love triangle thing though. That kind of it's kind of throughout this movie. I guess you could say it's a love square if you count Commodore Norrington as well, because he still has feelings for her in some way. But most notably that last scene. I know we're jumping to the end of the film. Do you think that needed to be in it? Did you think it was a bit weird that she suddenly fell for Jack Sparrow?
She never fell for him. She was just...
Because there's that scene where she holds the compass in this movie, and I mean, we find out in this movie that it points to what you want the most, and it points to Jack.
But it's because she wanted to get to Jack to get Will back, and it just didn't work. I think it was literally she was kissing him just to get him locked up because she wanted to leave him, and I think that was there to kind of push the triggers on Will in the next film. But she didn't need to kiss him to lock him up. She could have just locked him up anyway herself. But no, that was arguably her best scene in the film, the final scene on the Black Pearl.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like, although I love that scene, it does lead, and I don't want to talk too much about the next movie, we'll save that till we review it, but the whole, like, pouty Orlando Bloom face when he's mad at her for kissing Jack Sparrow, because of course he sees her in the last second kissing Jack Sparrow, and he implies that differently, but we'll get on to At World's End at a later date. Let's talk Commodore Norrington, because this guy has a complete 180 from his character in the first movie, and I love that about him. He is really brought down... Actually, you could argue that most of the characters in this film are, especially Keira Knightley. I mean, she was the prim and proper woman in the first one, then she becomes much more piratey in this one. And the same goes for Commodore Norrington as well. We learned that great backstory that he tried to pursue the ship, because he gives them a bit of a head start, doesn't he? Because it's that awkward kind of, okay, we'll let them off on this one. We'll give them a couple of days head start at the end of the first movie. Then we learned that like a hurricane hit, and he just like went full blown straight into it, which like killed all his crew. He got demoted. He's like nothing now, and we find him in exactly the same opening situation as we do with Mr. Gibbs. He's drunk in the pig pen. And it's a completely different side to the character, but it makes him just so much more compelling that this poor guy who's, gone through all these promotions has now just ended up in exactly the same situation as, like, Jack Sparrow.
What's so great about him is you've got, from the first one, a very two-dimensional character, and like you said, they 180'd, they flipped the script, and by doing that, he got character development, he got a story arc, he got a redemption sort of story as such, and seeing him as... everything he is against, that I think that's the main thing. He's not clean shaven, he's got his beard, he's in his tatty sort of robes. It was such a clever way to bring him back, because you can't really bring him back as Commodore because we've got the East India Trading Company now. His purpose is void, and he just wants to get his job back, and his angle is, I honestly love him because there's still that sense of noble, sort of the nobleness about him. He did want to catch the pirate at the end of the day. That's what my story is the same as yours, just one chapter behind. The build up of it, he's one of the most compelling characters in the series, and I genuinely think it all comes down to how he is in the second film.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, again, I don't want to jump forward to At World's End, but just the great character development he had in this one just makes me hate how they handle his character in the next movie even so much more. He actually gets a really cool action scene in this as well, which we'll talk a bit later when we get to the action scenes. But you mentioned what his character was in the first movie has become with this movie, and that's in the character of Lord Cutler Beckett, played by Tom Hollander. This guy is one of the most like slimy, sleazy bad guys I've ever seen in the film, but I love him for it. You can tell he's having a blast playing this character, but even when you see him in interviews, he does have that kind of couldn't give a shit attitude. Like, he's so laid back. I don't really know. He reminds me of like a Lucius Malfoy kind of character, or like Gilderoy. Like, he loves himself. He's so foppish and everything. He thinks he's the boss of everything, but he really isn't. I think he's fantastic. Great addition to this movie.
Yeah, he's in all honesty, he is the villain of the piece. Has he got a death warrant for them at the beginning of the film? He stops their wedding. He's there to the end of the third film. He's the encore villain of this sort of this two piece, I guess you could call it. but he's like Sir Lucius. He's a traditional British theatre actor.
Yeah.
And when the best thing about theatre actors when they come to act normal acting, not in a nasty way, some theatre actors are some of the best in the world. When at theatre, they don't rely on facial expressions as much as films do. And sometimes in conditions like this, a blunt face is not a criticism, but it is truly perfect. The character he's playing, that snidey bastard that he doesn't care, he's not going to wink or grimace about things, he's going to say it how it is. And in his position of power, he's a lord. He knows exactly what he's going to get from everyone. He knows how he's going to play the game. He knows what he wants. And he's a fantastic addition to this, because it would have been too repetitive to have Commodore going after pirates again. You needed the bigger angle, and by having someone wanting to basically take over the world, you could say, and end sort of piracy. Yeah, he's a great addition to the cast. Tom Hollander plays it superbly. For anyone that's seen Thick of It, he is amazing in that, because he's the opposite of this. He's the posh boy that's crap at his job, whereas in this, he's the posh boy that's perfect, that meets his downcoming in the next one. But really, Cutler Beckett, he adds a lot to this film. Some of his scenes are some of the best in the film.
Yeah, and I remember when I saw this film for the first time as well, like the opening scene with the wedding, it did feel a bit weird, like we're just suddenly thrown into this new character, because how he's set up, it feels like they should have referred to his character in the first one almost, or like get a little bit of a reference to him. But I mean, from that opening scene, just how he plays it, you immediately know what kind of character he is, and that carries on all the way through this movie and into the next one as well. I think it's really cool how they did bring the East India Trading Company into it, because it is kind of that background setting. But I like how they did it where they are trying to, exterminate the act of piracy, even more so at the beginning of the next movie. But I thought you didn't have to throw that in. You could have just had this. Davy Jones could have easily carried this movie as the bad guy. And he is sort of like the go-to antagonist of this movie, but it's nice that you do have that kind of secondary antagonist, which I think is what filters into your problems with the next movie, and that they do kind of switch who the main focus is as the bad guy.
Yeah, it's like the Emperor and Darth Vader. In Empire Strikes Back, Vader's the bad guy you're seeing up front, and the Emperor's in the background. Obviously, you don't see him, but Beckett's the Emperor as such, and then they completely messed up in the third film. But we'll get to that tomorrow. But yeah, the dynamic that Davy Jones does tie into it eventually, I do like that when we get to the end of the second film. But yeah, we'll save that for tomorrow, because there's a lot more to say.
Yeah, so now we move on to the two new characters in this one that we kind of hit the category of who can overact the most. So we'll kick off with Tia Dalma first. We'll save the best till last. Played by Naomi Harris. Now, again, I think this is an element that's in the original Pirates of the Caribbean ride. There's a bit where you kind of go through like a swamp and you see like a wooden shack in the forest, and I guess that's what they kind of took reference from with this one. I will say I love that set. It's so mysterious, it's so creepy when they all go in there in the robots, and you've got like random people on the riverbank with like just holding candles and just kind of walking alongside the ships, and then you get the shack in the middle and it's like this voodoo queen. I thought that was great how they did that. Naomi Harris. I like Tia Dalma. I do like Tia Dalma. I like her a lot more in this one than in the third one, for obvious reasons, for anyone who's seen these films. Her accent, like, I know she said, I can't remember exactly, I did watch the behind the scenes, I think she said, I don't know if it was a grandma, or she's got, like, relations that have that accent, so she's based it off that. But it's kind of a bad accent, I'm not going to lie. It does feel really forced, and maybe that's because I've seen Naomi Harris in a lot of other stuff where she just has her regular accent. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of nice world building though, because she is kind of this witch character that we haven't seen before in Pirates of the Caribbean up till this point. And she does give some kind of like lore about what happened to Davy Jones, and it does feel like an old sea tale that's been passed down throughout the ages. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on a character in this one, but I think that her addition kind of works for it, and it does give us that new kind of cool setting for her.
Oh, Tia Dalma was such a weird one. Like you said, the set is stunning. The mystery woods, the long sort of grass, the creepy build up. Even the music as such is really like sort of daunting with her. And when you go in that house, it's just bizarre thing. It's almost like you look. It's like watching a Star Wars film, isn't it? You look around and you can find Easter eggs everywhere. Yeah. I love the fact that in her house there's just madness everywhere. And we get the tease of what's to come with the Obviously, the monkey going over to the boot at the end.
Yeah, like I never even thought anything of that when I watched it for the first time. The ending did really get me.
Yeah, same. We'll get to that later, but I just then the longer she's on screen, the harder it gets not to like her as such. But I mean, I can understand her perfectly, but she fits into Pirates of the Caribbean. But maybe it is the accent. But when you said overacting, I think that does compensate really well because, you know, I just don't like her. She's got a purpose and she fulfills the purposes. You know, she's the kind of guide. She tells them where to go. She gives the sort of the story to Davy Jones. Obviously, that ties into it when they found out they were a little sea couple. But it doesn't feel right. And then you get the ridiculous reveal in that third film. But I'm not the biggest fan of Tia Dalma. However, I like the scenes she is in. I don't know how that works themselves. That might be because of the background and because of the story arc that continues with her in the film, but I just feel it was too overacted and a bit too extreme for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
I think
it's very different, isn't it, to what we've seen before, and you can take that as a good thing or a bad thing. I will say though that from all of her scenes, all of the most quotable lines from this film do stem from her character in a way. Whether it be the jar of dirt or the undead monkey, they kind of are all centered around her character. One of my favourite ones in the film is where I think it's where she first gives him the jar of dirt and she's like, if you don't want it, give it back. And he's like, no. Like, I love that scene. I don't know. I like her character in this one, but I think her character should have ended in this one. I don't think we needed her character continue into the third one, sorry. Especially with where that goes, but we'll get to that in our next review. Let's talk about the greatest new addition in this film. I'm going to let you take this one first because I know how much you want to talk about him. Bill Nighy as Davy Jones.
Oh my god. I can't even describe this. I mean, you know, it's not just he's a green tentacle face. It's honestly probably one of my top 5. Do we ever do that? One of my favourite villains of all time. I'm just going to say that. Every single time he's on screen, he's over the top, but in a way that works. The same way that Barbossa was over the top because he's an evil bastard. This guy he's not as evil because his purpose isn't, you know, to single-handedly kill everyone, but he just wants to get his debt back from Jack Sparrow, and he's this. It's really hard to talk about him because I haven't really planned what I was going to say, but the way Bill Nighy performs in terms of motion capture, which we've half spoke about, this is honestly one of the best motion capture performances of all time. The way that the tentacles are moving 24/7. Just imagine being an animator that's job was to animate like one tentacle for one film. Just think about how insane that genuinely it was and is to this day. But this film needed, when you look at the first film, it's a very personal villain as such between Jack and Barbossa. Then you get to the second film, and you need to up the stakes. And Davy Jones is a sort of a legend as such. Like C tells earlier, Davy Jones, you know, the Locker, the Kraken. It's all. I think
they mentioned
stories.
that in the first movie, don't they? At least, or they like send him down to Davy Jones' locker. I think they do mention that in the first one. Obviously, they didn't know they were going to get to like a squid guy in the second movie, but you can say that it has been hinted at. Yeah,
and you know, even Blackbeard as such comes in the fourth film. These are names, you know, people have heard of. People they've gone for the sort of pirate legends, I guess you could call them. But Davy Jones, it's stunning. Every scene he's in, he steals it. Whether it's his performance, his that noise he does a lot. Smoking a pipe with his tentacle, playing the organ with his tentacles. This is a guy of like many talents, and it's really hard to talk about him because every time he's on screen, I'm just captivated. I listen to every word he says, even when they're playing that Liar the Pirates dice game. He just sits down and plays it, and you know, Bill Nighy's got this, not an attitude with him, but he brings on this gravitas that when he's pissed off, you can see it in everyone else. That the captain is angry and he's doing his job as a captain. He doesn't feel like he's part of the crew. He feels like he's head of the crew, and that's what he needed to be. But he's got that serious threat, and I don't feel that he overacts, but I feel that
I do. I think he completely overacts in all honesty, but that's not a bad thing.
I think overacts in terms that it doesn't. To me, it doesn't stand out he's overacting because to me seems like the character would be overacting.
Yeah.
Whereas with Tia Dalma, in real life, she shouldn't overact so much. I'd picture her to be some like old witch that's quite quiet and stuff like that. Whereas Davy Jones, you know, he's a man. He's got no heart, and he shows that with his, you know, when he's laughing at Will and Bill reuniting with each other, he's sort of smiling as he's watching his someone whipping their own son.
Yeah,
he's an evil guy, and he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think back now. I think before this film I did watch Love Actually, but that was like one time and I couldn't really remember it as a kid. So this was kind of properly the first film that introduced me to Bill Nighy, and I will say, both now when I watch his films before this one and after this one, I'm always looking for those Davy Jones quirks. And we were talking before we hit record, the character he plays in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, I think he gets the opening scene in that movie. He is so Davy Jones with his performance in that bit, it's kind of amazing. God, what can I say about his performance that you haven't already said? It's kind of like Andy Serkis with Gollum, that when you look at Gollum, you know it's a completely fictional character, different, but you can see... Like with Gollum, you can see Andy Serkis in the face of Gollum, and you can even do that with Davy Jones with Bill Nighy in this one, because I think I read that, like with his high cheekbones, they did integrate a lot of his facial structure of Bill Nighy into the character of Davy Jones, and like eventually when he turns into a human for that brief period in the next movie, you can completely buy that it's the same character. And I think even the animators, like, they had an absolute joy animating it, because Bill Nighy's performance was so expressive and quirky, like way more quirky than they expected it to be, that they had a lot to play with and a lot to, adapt to the tentacle face and everything like that. I think the only scene that they actually made real practical tentacles for was in the scene where Will's trying to get the key from underneath them. I guess that's just easier. It looks better on camera when it's close up. But yeah, God, he's just having the time of his life in this role, and he really is. It's a different kind of over the top to Barbossa, and I agree with you there. Like, they did need a different kind of villain with this one, and that's absolutely what we get. I love the design of him. When you think of Davy Jones, like before you see this movie, I would never have pictured doing Davy Jones like this, and even his performance as well, I'd have expected a lot more kind of a sinister character, whereas he does have his sinister moments in this, but he also does have that, he's like Barbossa, he does have that fun with it. He does get a bit of comedy in there. And the effects as well, I mean, absolutely deserve that this won the visual effects. What ILM did with this is incredible. So we look at the special effects they did on the Cursed Pirates. I don't think ILM worked on the first movie, did they? I might be mistaken on that, I'm not sure. But they had a completely different visual effects procedure in the first one. I mentioned it in the previous review. They had to film the scene with the actors on set, then without, and then they had to do some stuff in the motion capture studio, and then they had to kind of merge it all together. So within that 3-year span, you can just see how much the technology had jumped forward in this, to the point where not only do we have Davy Jones as this motion captured character, but the rest of his crew as well, and they look great as well. I love the designs. Apparently the makers of the film watched a lot of nature documentaries on like sea creatures to see how they move, and I love how they integrated in that. And even when I watch the films now, it's cool just to like pick out background characters of part of his crew and see what kind of, like, you've got the hammerhead shark guy, you've got the one who's kind of got the seaweed for hair with like the big bulbous nose. You've got the one in this movie that's played for laughs with like the big giant conch shell on his head. It's great, the stuff they did with the effects in this, and I mean, the one who's at the head of that all is Davy Jones. He's the main focus, and they absolutely nailed it in this film.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this. It would have been embarrassing for them, I guess is the right term, if they'd have designed a crew member that looked better than him. And, Hammerhead is the second in command, you can tell, and that's, to me, he's got the second best design. And that's the way I saw it. There's almost a hierarchy that I could imagine the producers sort of saying with themselves. But the crew is, there's the guy with the puffish half on his face.
Yeah.
You could literally sit there and look at these guys for ages. The animators, I do not envy that job. But whoever animated this can generally look back and say, I helped design that character. And, I think a lot of people love these characters because the skeletons are cool, but really it's only you've got Barbossa and a couple of others that are memorable, whereas every single one of these is memorable to their own right because they're not generic sea creature things. Each one has been done differently. They've been designed differently. They've all got their own purpose, and I love what they do with them. They were the right villain. Yeah, the Flying Dutchman design as well.
Oh yeah.
Everything feels like it is connected to Davy Jones, because you could have them on a clean ship and it's like, well, this shouldn't work. This ship needs to look nasty, and the Flying Dutchman just looks absolutely stunning in this film. From its from the tri-cannon at the front to the sort of it's almost like a teeth, isn't it, when it comes out the water?
Yeah.
I love what they do with it. and obviously then you get Baby Kraken, who is literally looks like it could be an offspring of Davy Jones with the tentacle stuff. They nailed the consistency throughout the design of Davy Jones's crew, and oh my god, the CGI in this, like I said, it still looks amazing today, and it definitely deserved that Oscar because it is up there, and this will always be remembered as one of the great CGI films. And to me, I love motion capture, the technology, always been intrigued and interested in it. Davy Jones is top 5, and he will be for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's even to this day, when we look at the likes of Rogue One, it's still a technology that's constantly developing and improving, and I can't wait to see where this technology is in 10 years' time. Maybe we will eventually get to that photorealism that the studios seem to be pushing for. But you mentioned the Dutchman there, and there's so many great additions in this movie, and the Flying Dutchman is absolutely one of them. I love the Pearl. Like, I'm always gonna love the Pearl because it's the OG ship, the original movie. Like, I love that ship to death. But the Flying Dutchman, every time it bursts out of the water, like, I just get that absolute adrenaline kick. And that was one of the best elements from the trailer for Dead Men Tell No Tales, actually, was seeing the Dutchman back. I'm kind of surprised they did give away that in the trailer. I thought they'd save that for the movie. But I mean, in hindsight, I can't wait until I see that in the new movie coming out. I will say as well, just really, really quick aside, you mentioned it briefly earlier about the Liar's Dice scene. This was the first movie that introduced me to that game, and I remember watching it as a kid. Like, they briefly explained the rules, but I was kind of lost all the way through that scene when I first watched it, in all honesty. Since then, I've learned how to play Liar's Dice, so that scene is just tense as hell now when I watch it. I love that scene. I think we need to start talking about the action and the CGI now. So do you want to kick off with Pelagosto first, or do you just want to get down to brass tacks and talk the Kraken?
Let's go for Pelagosto first.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that, I mean, when I first watched this film, I did laugh. I did think it was funny, and it's just Jack Sparrow being Jack Sparrow, absolutely. But watching it again now, the film just grinds to an absolute halt. And I mean, this scene does go on for a pretty long time. It feels like it's about I didn't time it. It feels like it's a good 20-minute sequence, because you have Rigetti and Pintle trying to steal the ship off the beach, which genuinely is pretty funny. You've got Jack, who's being worshipped as a god. Then you've got the crew that try and rescue him, and they're in those ball cages and have to get to him and then get him back to the ship. It does give us that funny image of Jack Sparrow running along the beach, though, just screaming as the entire tribe's chasing him. But I think when this film came out as well, I think there were some complaints as well, like calling racism, saying that, like, those people being cannibals and everything like that. I get why it's in the movie. They just wanted like a fun action beat in there, but in the great scheme of things for this film, it really isn't needed.
No, it's...
And they do some really over-the-top stuff with Jack Sparrow in this one, like when he's got the giant fruit kebab on his back and he, like, flips over the cliff and falls down.
Yeah, I wasn't the big... I mean, I love this, and it's got its kind of place. That, okay, he's got the mark, he can't just run for the next day of the Kraken, he's got to put up somewhere so he can introduce the rest of the film. It was... it felt so weird, like... This is the bit I like with, I think of the merchandise this film, the look, everyone used to go on about the eye thing that he did with that little kid with the knife and fork. It was okay scene. I liked the Pinto and Rigetti stuff with it. I thought they were funny. Good way to bring them back, because they deserve to come back, especially when they sort of crashed the wave on them. I've always thought that's hilarious. I genuinely don't know if that was intentional. I'm guessing it is. Yeah. But just the way that they perfected the wave coming and knocking them off, I genuinely don't know that script to this day. But the islands, I love the bone cage, where they're fighting with each other, where they want to, there's that other crew. It's like, oh look, all the guys from the first film are in this ball cage, and all the new guys are in that one.
I wonder which one's going to survive.
I always laugh when the others start climbing up, and there's this pirate guy, and he's like got his face like laughing to himself, like, and he's like waving goodbye. And then, I don't know, it's just one of them funny scenes that I still laugh at, but...
And I mean, like, Gibbs in that scene mentions, like, I think Orlando Bloom asks, like, where did the cages come from? And they say, like, these cages weren't made until, like, the first crew came on board. So I guess that means that Anna Marie from the first movie...
that's what I think.
I guess she got killed on Pelagosto and got turned into a bone cage.
And, maybe it got the bone cage that dropped into the ocean at the end. I think it's hilarious, like the potential of memes that come from the guys that die first when they're screaming. But it's a nice way to sort of integrate the crew. Like I said, everyone likes the crew guys, and it's nice to see them integrating, having their moments with each other. It's good to see the old guys back, except Zoe Saldana, who didn't obviously come back. But It just dragged. I think that's the best
Yeah.
way. I liked the crew stuff, but I didn't like the Jack stuff on the island. And I don't know if that's just me, but it doesn't drag getting the crew back. But with Jack, it does. And the little kid and them throwing coconuts at him. It just, to me, that was a bit unnecessary. And obviously the classic running away, that was all over the trailer. I can remember that.
Yeah.
But it dragged. It wasn't needed, but I liked it there because it gave you that sort of light-heartedness that you had from the first film before you got to the dark and depressing stuff of David Jones.
Absolutely. And before we get to the giant standout set piece of this movie, there is actually another scene I wanted to talk about because I think the Kraken, we're just going to talk for ages on that. We've got that great sword fight on the mill wheel. I'm not going to lie, I kind of love that scene. I think it's an absolute genius setup for a fight. I do think it gets a bit mired in the whole, again, like who's on what side, and you've got like about 4 characters in that scene, 3 during the fight, and they've all got different agendas of what they want to get out of this fight, try to get the heart, but I mean, it's completely ridiculous that this wheel carries on rotating all the way through the jungle onto the beach. But the fact that some scenes they actually did build the wheel. They did have the stunt guys on there doing the fight. Visually, it's just an incredible scene, and the music. We'll get to the score in a minute, but Hans Zimmer's score really just makes this scene work for me.
Yeah, I love the mill. It's the classic. How do we top a sword fight? Well, we have a triple threat. I genuinely can't even think. Not even in Star Wars films, we haven't had a triple threat of lightsabers against each other.
Well, Duel of the Fates, I guess, but
it's more of 2-on-1 though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. All against each other at once. You mean?
Yeah, and each of these guys, Jack wants it for him. Will wants it for his dad. Norrington wants it because he's the noble guy. And I love the angle. I love how they do it. It feels fresh. I hate the Elizabeth joke where she collapses again.
I can't stand that.
I didn't like it the first time. Maybe some people did, but it's just a throwback to the first film. We didn't really need it.
You just kind of like waving your hand, like yeah, shut up, love. I'm trying to watch the fight here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's a great sword fight. They've all got their moments, but then once the wheel goes, it's so over the top, but it works. And even when they're fighting inside of it, I thought it was honestly great. And there's just that brilliant moment at the end of it when Will and Norrington get out. And they're both like, they want to throw up, and they're just all over the place. But it was a nice tease, and especially when you get at the same time as the Davy Jones crew are in water, and they're trying to get Elizabeth and Brigetti and Pintel. I thought I said the name then. They've got they're rotating that 2 swords between 3 people, but it's just cool to see the Davy Jones crew do something else and be on a boat. But yeah, it was just that's all a tease of what's to come at the end.
Yeah, now we've put it off long enough. Let's talk the Kraken. So we get 2 big Kraken action scenes in this one, and it's really clever how they do this as well, because the first one, it's a big set piece, but we just get enough. But then, although it's it's a creature that fights with tentacles essentially and drags ship down, there's only so much you can do with it. But the first fight and the second fight are completely different with how they handle it, because at the beginning of the second fight, they start to go about it the same way. They immediately blow off the tentacles, and then it's like a completely different setup right after that. Like the Kraken changes strategy, so they keep it fresh throughout this entire movie. And if we're talking like new additions, what they do with the action scenes in this involving the Kraken is just absolutely spectacular, even to this day. I think there's only... Obviously, they didn't have real tentacles on set, but I think they still did have things for the crew to interact with. And the scene where the ship gets cracked in half, I think they had 2 big concrete pillars that they just sort of like dropped on the ship, which gave it the effect of knocking it in half. And the soundtrack as well. I know we're going to get onto the soundtrack, but my God, the Kraken is a force to be reckoned with in this film.
It's... the Kraken scenes are, without doubt, the best scenes of Pirates of the Caribbean. There won't be a better scene in Pirates of the Caribbean than the Kraken scenes. I'll say that.
I would argue for the ending of the 3rd movie, but I can completely agree with what you're saying about the Kraken.
It's the build-up. So this is where Will plays into it again. You can't have 2 Kraken scenes without... like I said, it's repetitive. So by having Will witness what happened in the first sort of loss, that actually helps the film itself, because he can not only say this is going to happen, but it's going to tease for what's to come later on. And the Kraken will change strategy, because it would have been too easy. I mean, he eats the first one. That's kind of comic relief moment, I think, when he downs the first ship with the hat on, at the very, very beginning. But
Well, that kind of reminds me of, I mean, we've actually got quite a lot of comparisons to Star Wars in this. It's kind of insane, but it reminds me of how they handle the Rancor in Return of the Jedi, how when Ula initially gets sent down, you don't see the Rancor, it's really quick, immediate, and then once we get the dramatic reveal with the main character down there, that's when we get to see it in all its glory. It kind of reminds me in this as well with the Kraken.
Yeah, because the Kraken is a tease, it's a big part of this, and what really gets me in the mood is Davy Jones when it's like we've outrun his
speech.
And it's the smile, it's the monologue, it's the whipping, and I think is it Bootstrap Bill Turner's like fatal scream as well. Like you know it's gonna happen, and none of them disappoint. It's so hard to go into detail, but I love the fact that like I said, I didn't like the Elizabeth Swann when she's with that pointless crew, but I love the way they all die. I think that makes up for it. Maybe that's a good thing. And there's that really stupid guy who's like, take the spirit, take the dress, and then they just annihilate him. What I would recommend people is the behind the scenes videos, the Kraken stuff is absolutely phenomenal. They show the clip of the two blue concrete things coming down. That we've got one shot to get this right. They've actually a lot of science stuff with it to work out how the Fool's going to smash it, X, Y, Z, but the Kraken scenes, they're wonderful, and for the climax that's been built up for so long in the film, it really does pay off with the Kraken. I love that shot of when it comes up for round 2 on the Black Pearl with that famous image where the tentacles are kind of like you've got your nails like covered over your hands and just go straight into the cannons.
Yeah, I love that scene. I think it's really creative as well how they do try and beat the Kraken back in that final scene. I like how they very much keep the Kraken mysterious still as well. We get like a very blurry underwater shot of it, like a full body shot of it, and you can't really make it out very much. You get a full reveal of it in the next movie, but even still, it does feel like that mythological creature. Like you don't really get to take in a full good look at it because there's so many different areas to the creature. I love Rigetti and Pintel's line as well when they're arguing about how to pronounce the Kraken, whether it's Kraken or Kraken. It's a mythological creature. I can calls it what I want. So that's probably one of the most quotable lines from this film. But yeah, it's just such a good action climax at the end. It feels completely earned, and it doesn't feel like it's stagnated because we've had a completely different Kraken fight earlier on in the movie. I guess it's kind of a favourite scene of mine, but I can talk about it now. But how it ultimately ends, where Jack Sparrow does try and flee and play the coward, comes back, you get that. I love the soundtrack in that moment where it's that low angle reveal shot of Jack Sparrow come back to the ship and he takes the shot when he blows up the tentacles. But and the final confrontation as well, when you finally get to see the Kraken's mouth, where they actually just dump so much gunge on Johnny Depp in real life. That's probably one of the most imposing shots, and probably one of the most badass shots, when he just takes on this creature single-handedly. I love the last bit with the Kraken in this film, and it kind of, although we see the Kraken in the next movie, it kind of is the final farewell to the Kraken as well.
Yeah, I loved it when the teeth were on display and that slow motion of it going in, and then it cuts away to them watching on the boat in the distance. It was the perfect way for the ending to have the is Jack alive? Did he kill it or whatnot? The Kraken is just, it's like a cheat, isn't it? It's like when you get a new Call of Duty on the old games. It's like the game over bit, and they handle it really well in this film. Definitely this film, not the next one.
I love how they summon it as well, like you talked about it earlier, but how I thought it was a really creative idea how they wind up that big hammer that just sends the shockwave throughout the ocean, and then just all of a sudden the Kraken just like picks up on that. I thought that was a really awesome idea, and how that hammer is part of Davy Jones' ship as well.
Yeah, it's awesome the way they do it, and I think with the Kraken, it's like I said, the design, it fits into the Davy Jones sort of crew as such. It feels like he's one of them, although he's not really. But
yeah,
it's essentially his little pet, and he loves it. It's like it said the Rancor earlier. Davy Jones is the Rancor keeper, and you can feel it when he speaks about him in the next film. But I
just really want that shot now, like Return of the Jedi. I just want to see Davy Jones just sobbing and like one of the crew members try to console him.
It probably happened, but they chose not to show us any of the interesting stuff in the third film. But I feel that the Kraken did its purpose of the darker sequel, changing the stakes. The Kraken did that. It did it better than any pirate captain villain could do.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And to go along with the Kraken, he had an absolutely phenomenal theme song as well. So we'll get onto the soundtrack now. Hans Zimmer takes this one on solo. I'm guessing that Klaus. I'm trying to look now. I'm guessing that Klaus Badel's probably credited as like producer on it as well. And it probably did have that collaboration aspect going on with it, like the first Pirates of the Caribbean did. But you can definitely tell that this soundtrack had more of that Zimmer influence. It feels bigger. It feels bolder and more bombastic. And it introduces us to a lot of new themes. It brings back all the familiar ones. Obviously, the main Pirates of the Caribbean theme, which is one of the most incredible film soundtracks ever in terms of main theme. But we get a new theme for Jack Sparrow. And this theme itself just complete... Like, you listen to this and you just immediately picture Jack Sparrow just swaggering round. And it's incredible how he constructed that music, which feeds through all the rest of the movies. You've got the Kraken theme. You've got the Davy Jones theme on the organ and the Locket theme. There's just so many, and it does what a good soundtrack should do to a sequel. It still retains the themes and melodies and leitmotifs from the first film, but it introduces us to so much more and just really ramps up that energy for the sequel.
Yeah, it's a soundtrack that's absolutely stunning. Everyone's got their moments in it. It feels like, I mean, we said this with the first one, but even more in this one, I feel that when they were obviously sort of doing the recordings for it, you know, in a lot of these films they put them on the screen, I can just imagine them getting it note perfect. Every scene with the sort of the Kraken, when it's killing someone, when it's the build up to the concrete slabs coming down, it is truly phenomenal, and everything is compensated to the music as well as visually on screen. If you had a terrible soundtrack, it won't do anything. Davy Jones has the imposing church organ, and that really works wonders for the character, you know. Whereas, you know, the Tia Dalma, there's the love heart, the human angle to him. By playing it off that little instrument, it does do itself justice. It felt perfect, and it's my favourite of the pirate soundtracks, and it is a phenomenal soundtrack. See,
I think I'd mentioned this to you before we hit record. My favourite soundtrack is still At World's End, because that feels even bigger than this one. But if I'm trying to think of the sound, I have the soundtrack right behind me, but I actually can't reach it right now because I'm tethered to the computer with my earphones. But if I've got a favourite song from it, I love Hello Beastie, which is kind of the end track of it. I think it's like an 8 or 9 minute long song. It's quite long, but I love that steady build up to the like emotional farewell of Elizabeth Swann and Jack Sparrow. So that's probably my favourite. But it's one of those albums where every single track on it is just solid. So it's kind of impossible to just listen to one song from it because I always end up just listening to the entire album when I listen to it.
Yeah, and I'd say my favourite, obviously, as you can guess, is the Kraken. It's the build-up as well with that soundtrack to when it eventually, you know, comes crashing down. It's truly like an amazing piece of music. The whole thing. I love the whole either Davy Jones theme. There's reminiscences of the Kraken theme because at the end of the day, they are technically kind of, like I said, pet and master, whatever you want to call them, but everything fits, and I think that's the key part of a soundtrack, because if they had completely different themes they wouldn't work, but they do because they're similar-ish but completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess wow, we've actually gone for quite a long time on this review. It's surprising. We still need to talk about favourite scenes. We've mentioned some of them here, but are there any other favourite scenes that are your go-to ones with this film?
I mean, outright is the Kraken scenes.
Yeah.
Any others? I wouldn't say the bar fight. However, I love the James Norrington introduction scene where Gibbs is kind of crapping himself, Jack's hiding. I loved that sort of. It's a kind of monologue, but more of a back and forth. I thought that was a really strong scene. But and the scene where Will meets Bill Turner, and you know he's whipping him. That's a very powerful scene. And anything with the Kraken or David Jones, add that to the list.
Yeah, they're definitely part of my list as well. I will say I do love the opening Jack Sparrow scene because I like how it opens. It's like a cold open. We don't need to see the adventure that happened before. I know you mentioned there was a video game that came out which was set in between Curse of the Black Pearl and this one, which shows how Jack gets there. But I just love how we see this really weird like pirate prison in the middle of the sea, and then they're throwing all the caskets out into the ocean. Like a crow lands on it, starts pecking, boom. I remember being in the cinema and everyone just pissing themselves laughing at that scene because they knew exactly who was going to be in there. And then Jack Sparrow just breaks out. I think it was a great reintroduction of the character. I just love that scene. I love that setup. And another favourite scene as well, which we can talk about now, is getting that Barbossa reveal at the end. I remember, like, there's very few I wouldn't even call it a plot twist, but like, you know, like a plot moment where your jaw just hits the ground. Like, I did not see that coming. That's exactly what I had with this movie. And they do tease it earlier on in the film, as you said, with Jack the Monkey when he runs to the boots on the bed, but I never even thought anything of it. I didn't expect them to bring him back. And I guess you could kind of argue that it was a little bit of a cop-out, like, just to bring that character back in the first place. But Jeffrey Rush is just amazing. We talked about him yesterday, that I'm completely fine with bringing him back. And he's still one of the standouts. You could argue he is the standout of this entire franchise with all the other sequels that have come out after this.
Yeah, when I remember watching it for the first time, obviously, I kept spoiler-free. Back then, you couldn't really get film spoiled, in all honesty.
Very different time.
Didn't know anything about there being a third film, and then when he just comes down the stairs, I remember I still get goosebumps when I watch it today. But
because even when the boots are coming down, I still didn't know it was him until you get that proper full reveal of him at the end. And like, I was trying to guess who it could be. And
it's the apple as well.
Yeah.
It's honestly one of my favorite endings. It's just, you've got this moment of epicness, and then you know, obviously back then people would have had to wait a year. I didn't know that, and I said, "Oh my god, Barbossa's back." I think that's how everyone probably was. Whether or not, I'm guessing when the film was announced, they knew he'd been the third one, so people might have known. I don't know, but I'm happy that I went into that not knowing, because it was amazing.
Same, and I mean, I was kind of right there with you that I didn't know they were making, you know, they'd filmed a third one back to back. I knew we were going to get a third one based on this ending, but it didn't feel... The wait felt almost as long as it did for the first movie, to me, in all honesty. Because now when you say, like, a movie comes out next year, you can kind of go, oh, yeah, well, you know, I can wait a year. It's not going to be too long. Back then, it felt like an eternity, like whether it was between Star Wars films or whether it was between the Pirates of the Caribbean films. But, no, it was a great ending for this movie. I absolutely loved it. It does end on that cliffhanger, but that's how most trilogies do. And you've made the mention of Empire Strikes Back earlier. You've got Back to the Future 2 as well, which was shot back-to-back with 3. So most trilogies tend to do that, and I don't have a problem with that. I guess we'll round off with overall thoughts on Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest.
My favourite of the Pirates film. There's not much else to say. It's got some of my favourite scenes of the series, some of my favourite scenes in cinema. It's honestly a film that I could go back to, and I'd enjoy it as much every single time, and one day I would love to see it on IMAX screen.
Oh yeah. I will say that it's not my favourite one of the franchise. I definitely prefer 1 overall. I know you objectively prefer it, but I just think 1's just a much genuinely stronger movie. I do have a few plot elements with this one, in terms of it being a bit meandering and a bit of a drag at some point, because it is almost 3 hours in running time. But there's so much good stuff with what's introduced with this, whether it be Davy Jones, the pirate crew, the Kraken itself, the Hans Zimmer soundtrack. There's still very much to like in this movie. What I'd love that was introduced and then continued into the next one. So I'd absolutely recommend Dead Man's Chest if you haven't seen it already. Where have you been all these years if you haven't watched the Pirates of the Caribbean films? But that'll do it for our review on Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest. Be sure to comment, subscribe, and let us know what you thought of this movie. How do you think it stacks up in terms of all the other Pirates of the Caribbean films, and what are your favourite bits of this film? Anything you like regarding Pirates of the Caribbean, please do drop us a comment. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, pretty much every other day this week we're going to be reviewing Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Our next review will be on At World's End, followed by On Stranger Tides, in lead up to Dead Men Tell No Tales. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification icon as well, so you get a message every time we upload something new to the channel. That'll do it from us, and until the next review, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.